Today I'm going to show you how to make a cheesy 90s action movie intro song, kind of like you'd hear as the opening credits are rolling in a movie like Point Break or something similar. And we're going to use one synthesizer for this, the Korg 01RW, so let's get into it. As mentioned, I used just a Korg 01RW for this, so every single sound in this song is coming from that synthesizer. Beyond being an ethereal ambient machine, it's full of cliche early 90s Rompler bread and butter sounds. When you go back and listen to all of these film scores from the 90s, this was during the advent of Romplers. And as so, a lot of the music from these movies will have that uncanny essence as composers used modules like the Roland JV-1080 Korg M1 and the Korg 01W. Now for the drums here, the 01RW and all Romplers just have these crazy drum kits in them, and a lot of them still have that essence of the 90s. And so the drum kit in the 01RW is just from the stock ROM. It's called Mr. Producer. And basically the way it works is every key on your keyboard has a sample assigned to it, kind of like a sampler. And that's what you get. And so what I did with the drums here is early in the song, I just kind of have that snare hitting. And then the kick comes in. And then in context, and that's basically the drums there. Now, what I'm doing is the 01RW by default on this program has a good bit of reverb on it, but I'm also sending that kit to an external hardware reverb here, the Alesis Midiverb 3. Just some nice extra like 80s flair. And so you just get that big, huge 80s sounding snare, the big drums there. And that's actually a 4 on the floor kick. If you couldn't tell. And that's pretty much the beat. Now, for the core sound here, which is really that piano pad that you're hearing, this actually comes from an expansion for the 01RW. Now, when Romplers like this shipped, they typically had a stock PCM content within that sampler. So the 01W has something like 250 waveforms built in. But if you wanted more waveforms and custom patches, you could go out and buy these little CD cases here that came with 2 little cards in them. One card had PCM samples and the other had new presets that use those samples. And so for a lot of the sounds here, I used this very rare synth design card. This one's slick because out of all the expansions, it adds 98 waveforms. And a lot of those are like analog synth classic waveforms within here. And so this patch here, specifically the piano pad, it's a patch called MIDI pad off of that synth design card. The chords here, you'll see in Bitwig here, I just have this chord I put together in multi-note, and the notes I'm playing here are an F and then an A sharp as the root note. And that's the core sound there. And that's actually the first thing I put together before the drums is I just got that little lick there, just a 3-bar dun dun, little bit of sustain on there, repeat, and that's the main kind of idea that I built on top of. But just classic like Rompler piano pad sound. And that's what we have, just kind of repeating through the whole song. Now, something I like to do with these old Romplers is like reinforce the sound, and essentially what I'm talking about here is layering. And so you'll see this piano attack layer here, it sounds like this. And it's that same F, A sharp, and it hits in time with the piano pad, but I'm playing single notes instead of chords. And so you're essentially thickening up that sound of that core idea there. So both of them together, without it, with it. And there are some other areas in the song where I continue to layer on top of that, and we'll get in that a little bit later, but you know, layering, building up that soundscape, very important thing, just get a nice, much thicker sound out of your song. Now this next sound here does come off of the synth design expansion here. It sounds like this. Just a little bit of atmospherics within here. And so this is the patch on the synth design card is called Parasites. Super nice ambient type sound there, and I'm just using that as some added atmospherics. Now this next sound here is also from the synth design card. It is called Anvili. Sounds like this. It's just kind of a industrial sounding percussion one shot going through a bit of a delay here. And I'm kind of repeating that throughout the song when I find little pockets. And so the way I tried to arrange it is at the start, you know, our core idea here is 3 bars. And so about the 3rd bar in that idea, the volume drops a little bit. And so then I sneak in that industrial shot, just trying to like fill in the space with little pockets of, you know, this like little intricate sounds and things. And then this is actually the same sound there, that Anvili sound, but I just played a couple different notes in succession. So it sounds like, and then the previous sound. So taking what is kind of a more of a percussive sound and just playing it at different pitches on the keyboard can give you a lot of variety within there. All right, so this next sound here is also from the synth design card, and it sounds like this. So that, like, kind of an atmospheric sound with a little bit of like a string on it. And so you can turn it into a very musical element there by just playing a couple notes within the key of your song's main chords. And so that's what we did there. And all of this, like you can see on the timeline, we're just building up layers here, layers of sounds. All right, next sound up here is this little bass sound, also from the synth design card, a patch called FM Bass. So just a nice little twangy, kind of like a little Seinfeld porno bass there. And I think this one actually uses the O1RW's wave shaping capability within it, which just is a very good tool to add those kind of like twangy sounds to some of these more plucky types of things. So really cool, unique character to the O1RW. You get these kind of like funky, twangy bass lines. So this would not be a cheesy 90s song without some type of like airy bell sound. And so we have another patch from the synth design card here. This one is called the Mega Bell. We're just kind of playing a little bit of a lick there. find these type of like airy bell things all over Romplers. I think Korg always did it very well there. But again, just a little bit of melody, a little bit of sound on top of things there. And so if we play all the sounds that we've looked at so far together, this is what we get. Right, so very big full sound there, and it's that combination of layers reinforcing some ideas with additional layers but different sounds. You know, same MIDI notes but different sounds is how you get that like nice full rich texture. Now, a couple other things we added in here. One is this little bell tree sound. Very classic, like R&B 90s sound there. Good to transition into a new phrase. And then I put in some congas in here as well from a drum kit, the B29 Percussion drum kit, which is actually in the stock ROM on the O1RW. Very subtle, but you can kind of hear it as pockets open up in the song. Adds a little more rhythm, kind of locks in that groove a little bit as well. Last thing we have up at the top here are these cheesy guitars that also came from the Korg O1RW. Couldn't quite get these to sit right in the mix and the rhythm and everything, but you know, I think cheesy Rompler guitars are always fantastic in a song like this. So we have two of these panned left and right. Right, so it's like bouncing around in your head with a big delay on there as well. Right, so last thing to call out here is just effects. And so what I'm using for effects here is one, I'm using the Roland RSP 550, which is a highly underrated effects unit. And on that, I'm using one of the modulated reverbs on there, which the unit is known for. And so that, you know, you can see all the elements on here that we're sending to that reverb just to put everything in space. And then we have the Alesis Midiverb 3 that is being used for a little more reverb on here as well for some of these elements. Just an old, I think late 80s reverb, nice crust, nice sound to it. And then I'm cheated here a little and used the Bitwig stock delay. But I've talked about this before. I'll talk about it again in future videos. Using reverb and delay as sends is 100% the way to go. Just helps create a more cohesive, glued sound where everything kind of lives in the same space. So anyways, in closing, you know, the O1RW is incredibly versatile. I've done videos on how it's amazing for creating general sound effects, ambient electronic music, and now old cheesy 90s action flicks. For those without physical hardware, some synths you can use to get this same type of sound includes things like the Roland JV-1080 or 5080 VST, or even the Korg M1 and Wavestation VSTs from Korg. That's about it, guys. Hope you found the video interesting, useful, fun. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Until next time, have a good one.